This afternoon I want to talk about a passage which we're reading this Sunday in church from the letter of James, and it's an absolutely polemical passage, and I think it's incredibly contemporary, and so I want in the next sort of 5 minutes to think about what it says and why I think it's really resonant today. And the context, of course, the letter of James is it's a letter which is all about doing stuff. He attacks faith. He says, all very well to say you believe in Jesus, but what good is that unless you're actually doing something about it? It's not even real faith unless you're doing something about it. So the context is all about doing. And with that in mind, he then addresses one particular form of activity, which he attributes to a very small part of your body, but he says is the most powerful part of the body. And he's not talking about the head, he's not talking about your nose, he's not talking about your hands, he's not talking about your feet, he's talking about this, your tongue. The tongue, he says, is the most powerful part of the body. And then he also talks about it being very dangerous. And he compares it to different things. On the softer one is he compares it to the bridle, a bridle which the bit which goes into horses' mouths, and with this small piece you can control a horse. He also said it's like the rudder of a boat. The rudder of a boat can be huge, can travel huge distances, is a big thing, but the piece of wood which controls the boat's direction is the rudder, and that can be a small part. And then he said, he don't even say it's like fire. He says the tongue is fire. He says the tongue is fire, and then he says, quite a difficult way to translate it, a world of disorder, or a world of unrighteousness, or a cosmos. It's a cosmic order of nightmare, and he's really got it in for your tongue. And he notes that there are problems because with the tongue, it's hard to just attack it completely on its own, because you can bless, you can praise God, you can sing hymns with your tongue. But also what he notices is that people are vicious with their tongues, and you have to be so careful. That's what it's like. He said speaking for him is like playing with fire, and fire can destroy a whole forest if a tiny spark. And the reason I think it's so contemporary is I think a lot of the problems we have as a society relating to each other are to do with our inability really to speak well, which is exacerbated by social media. So okay, technically of course you're typing with social media rather than speaking, but I think it's the same thing. So that people who are acting just normally or well are inhibited and maybe stopped because of the way people speak about them. So just this week, I've been really excited about the tennis player Emma Raducanu's sort of series of victories in the US Open, but I was also really sad to read one of her opponents, a woman called Shelby Rogers, who just lost a match, and she said, of course, on social media there'll be loads of people calling me a fat pig now. She just lost a match, it's only a tennis match. And then this other tennis player, Sloane Stevens, said, yeah, you should see my social media. She said there'll be 20,000 messages, this is after she lost a match, criticising me. And even today I saw Twitter was trending with Chris Whitty, and there was loads of abusive stuff. Chris Whitty just seems to me a decent, nice, thoughtful man, trying to do his best, and he's got to make a recommendation about, as it happens, injecting, whether we should encourage the vaccination of 12 to 15-year-old children. It seems to me it's a complicated issue, and you've got to juggle all sorts of things, responsibility of the third world, freedom of the child, freedom of the parent to do what they like, overall virus rates, the way the schools can spread, the harm to education. Yeah, it's a difficult decision. And yet people just throw remarks out about him without really relating to the fact that there's a difficult problem, and just without really acknowledging him as a human being. And this stuff hurts. And the more we are like this as a society, I think a lot of good people just aren't going to put themselves forward to do jobs in the public eye. Because frankly, why should they cop the sheer amount of abuse that they get? And then I was just reading this chapter from James, and you just say, yeah. At first you think, if you read it out of context, you think, God, James, you've got a real problem with the tongue. It's not that bad, is it? Is it really a world of disorder? is it a world of evil? There's full poison, toxins he talks about. But then I look at some of the discourse around today and I think, he's absolutely got it. So just in how we relate to each other, especially maybe social media, but also in ourselves, can we just think about how we are using our tongue, remembering quite how potent a force it can be for good, but really, really can be a force for evil. And that will, if we think about it, I think maybe we'll preempt ourselves just saying uncaring things. It sounds bland in a way, but we just got to do it. And kind of rational people are forgetting that, and they just slap it out on Twitter as if it doesn't hurt. I think it really does hurt people, and we've got to stop.